Mitigation. We also have Mr. Leonard Francis, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA. And we also have with us Mr. Peter Clark, the Managing Director of the Water Resources Authority, Mr. Ainsley Henry, the CEO and Conservator of Forestry Department. We also have Mr. Garth Jackson, Acting Vice President of the National Water Commission, Mr. Yannick Watson, CTD in MEGJC, and Ms. Gillian Guthrie, also CTD in MEGJC. And we also have the weatherman himself, Mr. Evan Thompson, Principal Director in the Met Service in MEGJC. And I know there are other senior officials from MEGJC. We also have Mr. Dwight Wilson, who is a Senior Technical Director in the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development with us. And we will be joined by some representatives from the JCF and also the Jamaica Fire Brigade. Now, as you hear that list, you know what our topic this morning.
You don't have a small YouTube channel, you have a sleeping giant. YouTube doesn't reward talent, it rewards
briefing that we will bring. Usually as we start these briefings, I usually go through a long litany of things that are going wonderfully well in Jamaica. But you know, this morning, I'm not the happiest, a little bit down because of the West Indies cricket team. Quite down. I saw them playing on Saturday and Sunday, and I want to forget what happened on Monday. But I do hope, as many of us who love cricket, that we can get it together. But there are other good things. On this week, on Monday, I had the pleasure of going around one of our parishes, especially in the rural areas, with our rural school buses that are being rolled out. And that was wonderful. I was able to speak to parents and children about the new bus service. And parents everywhere we went said that this is a game changer for them. It means that they will not have to spend the kind of money that they usually spend to try to get their children to school. Yesterday, I was with principals in regions 2, 7, and also 6. And they were making the same point that across Jamaica, especially in rural Jamaica, children go to school some days of the week. They don't go every day. And one of the reasons for that is because of the cost of transportation. And so the school bus system is delivering to our people something that they desperately need. And so I'm all here for it, and I'm all here supporting our rural school bus system because it is something that is transformative and will transform the lives of so many of our children. Our children in rural Jamaica are just as smart as children in urban settings, and we have to give them that chance for them to be successful in life. So I will stop with that one, Minister Samuda. Only one good news story I'm focusing on today because we want to really get into the briefing. And so I ask you to welcome one of our best ministers in this country, someone who works very hard, someone who I admire a lot. He is always on the go. He is absolutely brilliant. He is one that helped me to navigate cabinet when I just came to cabinet. And I know that we are very lucky as a country to have him and his expertise and his brain leading us in the ministry that he is in. And so I ask you to join me in welcoming the Honorable Matthew Samuda, Minister with responsibility for water, environment, climate change, and blue and green economies. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning, colleague, minister, and friend, and thank you for your warm welcome, Minister, the Honorable Dr. Dana Dixon, Minister of Education, Youth, and Information. Allow me to also extend greetings to your team, the senior team from your ministry. Of course, this morning I'm joined by members of the Integrated Water Resource Management Council, which is indeed a council of cabinet which looks at the water sector. And that council is made up with several members from agencies within the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, which is led by Mrs. Arlene Williams. Of course, allow me to acknowledge her CTDs, heads of agencies from the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, of course, representatives from the council, including members of the Jamaica Fire Brigade and indeed members of the JCF. Now, it is impatient of debate that we are experiencing climate change. And one of the impacts of this changing climate is indeed shifting weather patterns. So it is unusual for us to be having this discussion at this time of the year, but it is a discussion that we must have. And the discussion specifically that we will have this morning is related to current weather conditions and the impact on water systems and water supply. So how we're going to proceed with the discussion, with your leave, Madam Minister, is I'm going to invite firstly Evan Thompson of the Met Service, followed by Peter Clark of the Water Resources Authority, and then Mr. Garth Jackson, Acting President of the National Water Commission, to explain to the country the current situation, and then I will go into the government's response on the back end. So Mr. Thompson, perhaps you could join me and do your presentation.
Thank you very much, Minister. Good morning to you and to all persons present. I want to acknowledge the presence, of course, of our moderator, who is, of course, the Minister with responsibility for information, and, of course, my own permanent secretary, Arlene Williams, who is here with us this morning. All heads of agencies, everyone, good morning. I think the photo that you're seeing on the screen is probably the best way for me to start, because it shows that there's quite a disparity right across the country. In some areas, as you drive around, you'll see a lot of greenery, but in other areas, there's a lot of brown ground. And that means, of course, that things are drying out quite a bit in some areas. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about rainfall, but really focusing on where drought conditions are and, what kind of drought conditions we are expecting. So moving on, I'm going to do a bit of a transition through the dry season, which would have started since December of 2024 and continuing through January, February, March, April, and then going into what is the early onset or the rainfall season that would normally have occurred by May. So starting with our slide showing January, in January 2025, we would notice, oh, I have to change those slides, eh? Okay, January 2025, a noticeable dryness was observed in all parishes when compared to the 30-year normal. So I'll focus on those images you're seeing to the left side. The larger image to the top would show what the actual month shows, and then the smaller image will show what the normal season would look like. So we can see that there's a lot more browns and reds showing up on our January photo than what we would have normally experienced. So it shows that there was quite a bit of drying that we experienced during the month of January. Going through February, we see more of kind of similar activity, but it looks more like what the normal would have looked like. And so there was some amount of dryness, a little bit more drier to the southeast of the island in particular, but here we see what the comparisons are with those two periods. Going through March, we see a little bit more of the greens coming in the western part of the island, but there's still quite a bit of brown areas showing the dry conditions in the east central part of the country and moving toward the south coast. And then going through April, there was an increase in rainfall. We did see much more of the rainfall coming in April. So there is still some dryness that we can see in the larger image to the top over sections of, say, St. James going southward into St. Elizabeth. And then in the eastern part of the island, we also saw some dryness mainly toward the south. Going through May, however, we see a total difference here between what we actually experienced in comparison to what is normal. And much more of the reds and browns are showing up, the oranges showing up that show that the drought conditions were beginning to be in the west, but then the rest of the country showed up to be drier than what is normal. And we can see in the southern part of the island as well that the browns were kind of more entrenched, showing that that's where the driest conditions were being experienced. So we move into what we call the transition period, the wet and dry conditions for the early wet season, if you can understand all that jargon. But in the May-June period, significant dryness is noticeable over some of our southern parishes, while the converse is noted in the western end of the island. And drought conditions were determined for one parish, St. James, but significant dryness was also detected in 5 other parishes, and they are listed here. It includes sections of the east, sections of the north, and even south central parts of the country. So here now we look at what we are expecting, because there's an outlook that we continue to monitor. We have now started not only to look at the seasonal outlook, but we're looking sub-seasonally, where we look at smaller periods of time moving forward. So here we see in the period that we are currently in, going until next week, we are expecting lots of dryness, mainly over the southern part of the island. And you see that large area of reds and browns that is south of the island, but somewhat impacting on the island of Jamaica. And that's what we are expecting over the next few days. But then we are expecting the browns to continue in terms of the dryness continuing over sections of the island going through much of July. Here we have it even going into August, where we have those drier conditions that are expected to be impacting our island. Some of that could change in the longer term, but of course, we're looking at the immediate future, and we're seeing that there's a lot of dryness to be expected over the island. This is going into August, but then we take a look at our 3 to 6 month outlook. And for the first 3 months, although that's in the picture to the north, to the top, sorry, this is not north in this case, but the top of our image shows us that more of the wetness should be expected toward the western half of the island, but the eastern half could still continue to experience some amount of dryness, and this is for the period July, August, and September. As we move to the lower image, with October going through December, that's when we do expect to see a change. As you know, traditionally, we would have an increase in wetness or rainfall as we go through October, one of our primary rainfall season that prepares us for going into the next dry season. So we are expecting that we will have some amount of rainfall, that it will change the picture somewhat, but that is as we go toward the end of 2025. So that's where I want to take us. Just for you to expect that the conditions we're experiencing with dryness are expected to continue for a while before the seasons change. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Evan. I'm going to ask Mr. Peter Clark from the Water Resources Authority to give us a brief update as well.
Thank you, Minister Samuda. Good morning, both ministers, Minister with responsibility for information and Minister responsibility for water, my PS, my colleagues, heads of agencies, and all of us from the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. With regard to the water situation and water resources, we have to make it clear that with regards to our groundwater, which is the water in our aquifers, the water that we source from wells, that responds the slowest to lack of rain and dry conditions, because it's a deep set natural resource. So we can be pretty much assured that our systems that are served by wells will continue to be able to produce the amount of water that is required. However, our rivers and our streams and springs, those are more dependent on rainfall. They are what we call rain-fed. And so what it means is that those will respond a little bit quicker to a dry condition. Now, in our situation, a lot of our main rivers have what we call a base flow. And that base flow is enough to keep the rivers going through most of our dry periods. And even some of our more intense dry periods, we've had the rivers maintaining their flow. There are very few that really show a significant decrease in base flow. So again, those rivers will be up to par for what we want to remove water, abstract water from. So it means that for a lot of our major towns that are depending on these either wells or these kind of systems, they'll be fine. However, the real problem becomes when you consider what's happening with spring-fed systems and smaller stream, smaller river systems. These respond almost immediately to the lack of rainfall. With the projection that we've just had from Mr. Thompson of the Met Service, what it means is that going forward into June, July, and August, when we shall not be expecting to have as much rain as we would normally have, that impact will be felt just about then almost immediately with those kinds of systems. A lot of these are our minor water supply systems, yes, but even the National Water Commission, they do have systems that are dependent on springs as their source and small rivers as their source. So we have to anticipate that this is happening. We have to accept Evans' forecast as being real. And we accept, and in accepting that, we now have to anticipate. And it is in that now that we have to continue to make the plan on how we're going to get with that. And of course, our minister is here to assist us with that. The last year, this time, we were here talking about a major problem over in the western part of the island. And you can see, as you said, that, you know, with changing, with cliff shifting climates and so on, you can never really make that prediction on where your dry areas are going to be. So now what we're looking at actually is areas where we'd expect rain to be in the west, that we're seeing that in the east, we're seeing that is a problem. That problem is exacerbated because in the eastern part of the island, that's our mountainous part of the island,
This is Make We Talk Breaking News. This is Make We Talk Breaking News. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a special item of news just in. There is an explosion outside the United States Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. A car is currently in fire. That's an explosion in front of the American Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. The news that we have coming into us, that a car is currently in fire in front of the American Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. As we interrupt this program to bring you an item of news into us. This is Make We Talk Breaking News. News just coming into a news center that there is an explosion outside the United States Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. A car is currently in fire. That's news coming into a news center that a car exploded outside the United States Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. This is what we have coming into. This is Make We Talk Breaking News. Please stand by as we are coming in air. There we interrupt the press briefing from Jamaica House to bring you an item of news into our news center. A car has exploded outside the United States Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. The car is currently in fire as we speak. This is the video we have coming into us. No, we don't know if anyone was hurt. We do not know if anyone was hurt, but that is the news we have coming into us, that a car has exploded outside the United States Embassy in Kingston, Jamaica. The car is currently on fire. As soon as we get more news, we'll pass it on to you.
This is Make We Talk Breaking News.
We resume normal programming.
So is also being recommissioned, and that will bring about just over 2 million gallons of water additional into service, so that we can cut back on the regular abstraction from the raw water impoundments. We have just completed replacing a storage tank, a 1.5 million storage tank on the Hope property, and that will allow us some operational flexibility in how we distribute water to areas served by the Hope system, which is generally Hope Road, sections of Mona, going back into Ellison Flats, and Goldsmith Villa, coming down as far as the JCF Commissioner's Office, and sections of Wellington Drive, etc. We're also going to be looking at our interbasin transfers. We have water coming in from the Recovery system, which serves the Greater Spanish Town area. It serves Southeast St. Catherine, which is Portmore, Greater Portmore, Old Portmore, and Helshaw. And we'll be looking at how we regulate the supplies to those areas. As you're probably aware, we are doing some non-revenue water in the Greater Portmore area, and that will allow us to reduce the amount of input into those areas. The Yalas pipeline also has been perennially plagued by unauthorized connections, so we need to ensure that we double up our efforts to ensure that we don't lose too much water coming into the Mona, the Mona Dam from that source. In terms of the rural communities, we have actually completed the cleaning of a number of our spring heads, as well as the intake channels. And what you see on the screen there is one at a place called McPherson Springs in Rock River. We have done some cleaning of that water channel, and so the flows into the source will be maximized. We're also having to consider, although it's very uneconomical, how we treat with trucking, and also the ensuring that the wayside tanks are full. And of course, the important thing is to ensure that we can get the message out to our customers and consumers that they need to conserve, and that we're doing all we can to reduce the wastage of water, or the inappropriate use of water. Numbers, we haven't yet tabulated. We are at the start of it, so we haven't tabulated anything in terms of the trucking costs or the reduction in revenue, but we probably will hear something further on that later on in the season. The other short-term, and these are now resilience as opposed to response measures. We want to have some short-term measures which we are implementing. So for a number of systems island-wide, we're doing some immediate non-revenue water reduction activities. So we're actually working now in the Palmetto Pen, Palmer's Cross area. We're doing some work we've initiated some work in the Hayes, Portland Cottage, Portland Cottage, Sangsters Heights, Mitchelltown area. We are actually keying up a major project for Yalas, Easington, and Albion to reduce water loss by a cross-country pipeline. So that will probably go into the next financial year. The Shaw Park area, a lot of development in the Ocheres area, and we need to do some work there to reduce our non-revenue water. Similarly, in Santa Cruz, we have that challenge. Low Ground, Clarendon, We have a old pipeline leading from our low ground sources, leading through Ennis and Turners, and we have actually done quite a bit of work in terms of identifying the areas of loss and actually replacing some of those pipelines. And we're doing something similar in the eastern St. Mary area from Itoboreal, which is just east of Venata Bay, going through Agwalta Vale and up into Highgate. I will say that we have actually completed some work at our Agwalta Vale station, where the pumps have been replaced with more efficient pumps, newer and more efficient pumps, and we have actually seen a significant reduction in our energy consumption there. Significant reductions there because of that. But there's still a significant amount of work to be done in that location in order to ensure that Highgate and Islington does get a more reliable supply, a better service. In terms of resilience, we do have some bigger projects which we are working on, which are more medium to long-term projects. You'll all be aware that we have actually we have actually commenced construction on the 15 million gallon Rio Cobra water treatment plant, driving west along the north-south highway. Just before you get to the Rio Cobra bridge, you'll see on the right-hand side the works already underway. They have started excavation. All the preliminary works are proceeding to pace. The designs for the plant are being finalized, and that's going pretty well. And 2 weeks ago, we actually broke ground for what's called the Western Water Resilience Program. That involves a number of phases. The first phase involves a replacement of 68 kilometers of pipelines, starting from the Martha Bay treatment plant, going through Bounty Hall, back into Ironshore, and through to Montego Bay, Davis Avenue, or terminal storage at Davis Avenue. And a second component of that starts in Lucy and going all the way around starting west of Lucy and going all the way around to Negril. Significant work has been done in Negril last year, and so the challenges we had there in terms of our ability to supply water to the community, we have been able to mitigate some of the challenges we had there, and we expect that shouldn't be occurring this year. And as pointed out earlier, the West has had more water than the East, and so we don't have that problem this year, but next year we know what's going to happen. A special thing I want to just point out, that we're doing some work on the Hermitage Dam. We're actually in the process now of reviewing today the design documents for a rehabilitation, first phase rehabilitation of the Hermitage Dam. And that will include installing what we call drainage. Grout screening, drainage screening will be protecting the fault line in the area. We'll be looking at the intake pipe, the tower which we draw off water from to serve at different levels. There are valves there's pipelines. We need to replace all of those pipelines so we can abstract greater quantities of water on a more reliable basis. There's also the walkway bridge going across the top of the spillway that we're going to be doing. And we'll be installing some dam monitoring equipment, instrumentation. So all of this is really about looking at the serviceability and extending the design life of the dam. In addition to that, however, we are actually in the process now of looking at an assessment of options for increasing storage at the Hermitage Dam. And that is going to involve, there are a couple of options we need to look at. We're going to look at whether we should raise the spillway level, or whether we will need to install or to construct additional dams either before or after the existing Hermitage Dam. So those are some options we're looking at for the medium to long-term resilience, water supply resilience to the KSA supply zone. Ladies and gentlemen, those are my brief comments, and I turn it back over to Minister Dixon and Minister Samuda.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Consequent on the three presentations you would have just heard from the Met Service, the WRA, and the National Water Commission, I'm announcing this morning a suite of measures for drought mitigation efforts from your government of 350 million Jamaican dollars. Those measures will include $250 million, which will be executed by the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, which will see trucking, something I hate to discuss, but trucking that will be directed through members of parliament to the tune of approximately $150 million. It will see further trucking support to the National Water Commission of approximately $50 million to service critical infrastructure and $50 million towards additional tank purchases. We also expect through the Ministry of Agriculture, and I've spoken to Minister Green and he asked me to share this with you, that we will execute drought mitigation measures for our farmers to the tune of $100 million that will be shared between water, trucking, drip irrigation systems, and grass purchases. He will speak to that in greater detail later this week. It is unusual that this sort of intervention takes place at this time of the year. And as Evan would have said and would have shown in his graphs, we are not getting the rainfall that is in line with our 30-year calculated averages. And that in and of itself creates a very difficult circumstance for the water sector, whether it be the NWC, the municipal systems, or the National Irrigation Commission, because it makes it very difficult to plan. But I do want to make the point. Over the last 9 years, the investments that we have made in our water sector have improved and made drought resilient over 350,000 Jamaicans that were not previously. We are currently midway in $22 billion of capital investment in the water sector across potable water, sewage, irrigation, that will benefit over 900,000 Jamaicans when complete. Some of those projects will be complete in 3 months and others will take as long as 5 years when one contemplates some of the larger scale projects that we have. But we want to assure Jamaicans that the investment is already bearing fruit. We would have had this press conference 8 to 9 weeks ago based on current rainfall levels previous or prior to the investments already made. And with the investments that are being made, we expect that several large geographic areas will not have these sorts of discussions in the future. These large investments include the Western Water Resilience Project, which will see significant expansion and improvement in the distribution network, the processing network, and indeed the storage systems in Western Jamaica, spanning from the Martha Brae all the way around to Roaring River in Westmoreland. We also expect to see significant benefit from the continued non-revenue water work, which is taking place sometimes in a fragmented way so persons don't understand exactly what we're doing. But non-revenue water work includes major line replacements that the National Water Commission is doing, which goes up to about $10 billion this year. It also includes the $5 billion being spent through the National Works Agency under the Spark program, which changes old pipes so that when those roads are laid, they don't have to go and repair leaks immediately after. It also includes significant work being done by JSIF and NHT at the community level in that space. To also provide further update, the National Water Commission has completed its pre-qualification stage for the National Non-Revenue Water Partnership that we seek to have in place by next year. Additionally, we are also expanding water production capacity. We are already in construction through a PPP in the Rio Cobre water system that will supply 15 million gallons of water a day, and we expect that to significantly impact Spanish Town, Portmore, and Kingston and St. Andrew. Now, just as when we say the big numbers in terms of money, when you say these big amounts of water, people don't quite understand what that means. Now, what does this particular system mean? In February 2023, or was it 2022, Evan, the worst drought in Kingston and St. Andrew? 2022. In Kingston and St. Andrew, we were short 12 million gallons a day in that drought, in the worst of our droughts. This system will provide 15 million gallons of water a day when complete in less than 2 years based on where we are. So we are making the transformational investments in water distribution, in water processing, and in water storage, as Garth would have highlighted with what is to come with Hermitage and otherwise. But for now, a citizen who is facing the brunt of the drought and suffering from low supply, especially those who are supplied by municipal systems, because those are the systems that primarily pull from groundwater, meaning small streams. So when small streams start to dry up, we have dozens of systems in every parish at the municipal level, which affects approximately 11% of Jamaicans, which are severely impacted. And we have that list, and we'll make that list public, Madam PS, in terms of what is being affected at the municipal level. Those systems are severely impacted, and it requires a significant government intervention to make sure that people have the basic commodity. So this intervention is tailored to ensure that citizens get the response from their government that they deserve to ensure that we keep water available to all citizens. The agriculture side is covered and will be spoken of in detail, but Minister Green did ask me to remind Jamaica that we are also in a better place in agriculture as it relates to water supply, because recently we commissioned and started pumping water in the Parnassus irrigation scheme, significantly impacting southern Clarendon. Recently, very recently, he broke ground on the Pedro Plains irrigation scheme, which will transform water delivery to our farmers in St. Elizabeth. So we are more resilient today to drought than we were 3 years ago, but we have more work to do. And we assure you that we will continue to do that work and invest behind the efforts of the Water Commission, of Rural Water Supply Limited that helps the municipalities, and of course, the National Irrigation Commission. But ladies and gentlemen, you have our assurance that in working through the Drought Management Committee of the Integrated Water Resource Management Council, the $350 million allocation will reach persons who are most in need. And we've already engaged members of the police and indeed members of the fire brigade and SDC to ensure that we manage social cohesion during the dry period. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Minister. And as I said, as you hear, he just is speaking without notes or anything. He knows this area inside out. He's just an impressive minister.
I'm a dialect coach. I'm a dialect coach.
Want a career as a dialect coach? We're not the
also very attuned, very forward-thinking and preemptive of the government to have announced what has been announced this morning. We have a few members of the media with us. I know that Mahiri likes to start off, so let's do that, and then we go on the other side to Zara and the others, all right?
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News here. Yeah, so while following along with the presentations, I realized one key area that is being mitigated is non-revenue water. Could you give an estimate as to how much is lost through non-revenue water for, let's say, a year, and how much do you believe will be saved through these mitigation efforts?
So it's not a one-size-fits-all in terms of the non-revenue water issues that we face in Jamaica. In Kingston and St. Andrew, the concluded pilot project would have brought non-revenue water from approximately 70% in 2016 down to 38%, meaning we were losing up to 70% of the water in Kingston and St. Andrew in 2016. When we formed government, we're now at 38% in Kingston and St. Andrew. Now, what that means is we used 55 million gallons of water daily to service the network in 2016, and today we use 37 million gallons daily to service the network in Kingston and St. Andrew. So imagine all of the high-rises, all of the townhouses, all of the apartments, all of the businesses that have been built in Kingston and St. Andrew. You use less water today, 10 years on, than you did 10 years ago. That pilot was extended to the Portmore area. It is around 40% now, also down from about 70%, and we've seen consequent reductions also in energy usage because you're not pumping water into the ground in that regard. Now, what would have come to the fore last year with the Negril issues and certainly the issues facing the western part of Jamaica was just how bad it was in some of our townships where pipes were laid 60, 70 years ago. In Negril alone, we were able to last year reduce line losses by over 3 million gallons of water daily. So that gives you an idea of just how much work we still have to do. It is why the government, through the partnership with the World Bank, went out to international tender for a non-revenue water partner. That procurement activity is still underway, but pre-qualification is indeed finished, and we expect to wrap up that procurement later this calendar year and sign a partnership or two next year.
And second question, you did speak about climate change earlier and the effect that all of that has on the mitigation efforts that are being conducted right now. But in terms of the future, you have spoken about the fact that there are projects that will be completed 3-5 years down the line. But in terms of climate change and how much it is constantly making things worse, especially for the Caribbean region, does it worry you that as climate change worsens, it may cause the ministry or the government in general to continue to have to put more mitigation efforts in place in the future?
Not may, it will. The reality is the changing climate was projected, or what we was targeted for expected temperature rise of 1.5 degrees Celsius. There are some scientists who say we have already breached that point. So national adaptation plans will have to keep pace with the climatic realities. Jamaica is nearing completion and is doing its final review of its national adaptation plan. Now that contemplates that because of the changing climate and because of the shifting weather patterns, some things have to be done, meaning you have to climate proof your agriculture. You have to use what we call JSTRAT, which is the Jamaica Systemic Risk Assessment tool, to evaluate all of your infrastructure. So something like roads have to be moved inland because of saltwater damage to those roads. But in the water sector in particular, you have to out-invest to protect the resources that you have, being very clear that you may have reduced resources at that stage. And one of the major things that we have to do, or certainly two major things that we have to do, is one, stop wasting it by pumping it into the ground with old leaking pipes, which will significantly reduce our demand nationally, even while you expect economic expansion because of the policies of the government. And secondly, you have to significantly increase your storage. It is the government's intention, as Garth would have just spoken to expand the Hermitage facility, whether with a new wall or with an increased height on the existing wall. We do intend to build a second dam at the Mona facility, and we are looking at the Mahogany Vale system and testing the stability of the water supply that comes from both the Negro River and the Yalas River. But beyond that, the Prime Minister has already articulated a vision that will see a pumped hydro system, which would see a massive dam being built, likely in Clarendon. Now, these works are all 2 to 10 to sometimes 15-year works, because the feasibility studies alone require to go through more than one cycle to check the reliability of those water systems. But generally, the government accepts that it will need to invest significantly. And because of that acceptance, we had partnered last year with the World Bank, and they evaluated our entire water system for potable water, irrigation, and sewage. And their estimate is that we require investment of close to $5 billion by 2030 for us to be.
I'm Jonathan Finiak with Wyoming LLC Attorney. We can assist you with everything from asset protection trusts to estate planning to limited liability companies to corporations, and we can form entities in any of the 50 states that will keep you private and protect your assets.
Pace of climate change speeding up.
All right, thank you, Minister. Zara?
Good morning, Minister. Good morning, everybody. I have a couple of questions based on a presentation from the government regarding the Western Resilience Water Project, or maybe I said that wrong. At the groundbreaking, both you and Prime Minister Honus talked about being answerable to the citizenry. Prime Minister Honus said, probity and transparency are required by the Jamaican people. So with that in mind, I was wondering about the competitive process in selecting Vinci to carry out this project. I wanted to know what, if you could describe the competitive process that was used. 2, the project cost $67.5 billion Jamaican. 28 billion in the first phase, and according to you, not $1 of debt. How are we financing this $28 billion in the first phase and the overall $67.5 billion? Dr. Chang did say it will cost taxpayers. I'm just trying to understand how is this going to be paid for. Thirdly, last time we were both in this room in February, you said the Rio Cobra Water Limited PPP does not reflect government debt, meaning there is no liability to the government or to the people of Jamaica. However, this project is a PPP being undertaken by a group of private sector companies, and yet the Auditor General Department and the NWC have confirmed that this is a government pays PPP. A government pays PPP means that it requires GOJ funding and support for operations. In the PPP policy by the government of Jamaica, it says PPPs do not create fiscal space. They must be accounted for in the books of the government. Has the Rio Cobra Water Limited project, PPP, been accounted for in the books of the government? Last question. At the same groundbreaking, you said that 3 years of surpluses at NWC, you talked about that. But I'm seeing in the tables that were submitted as part of the budget for 2023, 2024, to 2025 to 2026, all had net losses before and after taxation. So I'm trying to get clarification around the 3 years of surpluses that you were speaking about in July. Here.
So you've requested an essay based on the number of questions. So I'll try and recall each one that was framed. The Western Resilience Water Project is a project that was contemplated and designs for elements of it and varying components of it contemplated from 2002 by the former PJ Patterson administration. It was around that time they built the Logwood treatment facility in Hanover, which serviced quite a bit of Hanover and indeed Negril. You'll note that the same contractor would have built and designed that system, and that was their entry into the national water sector. During that period, fiscal space has been particularly limited. So varying elements of the water network have been allowed to degrade on the back of 25 years, 30, sometimes 40 of disinvestment in those issues. The lines, for instance, from the Martha Brae into Terminal Reservoir in Montego Bay are severely degraded. The usual standard is if a line like that breaks 4 times a year, you'd replace it. We've had weeks where it's broken 4 times in a week. So that line, which supplies over 250,000 persons, is at the end of its useful life. Now, fast forward to 2024, when the western end of the island experienced its worst drought in history, where Negril saw hotels having to pump water from swimming pools to support urgent needs, where the fire brigade had to jump in and help us to keep schools and health centers open, where we had to coordinate very closely with the security forces to maintain basic social cohesion. You will recall that the project was declared an emergency last year. There was not a competitive process. We used the firm that had worked on the varying nodes of the project for over 20 years to do the engineering and consequently to take on phase 1, which sees 68 kilometers, I believe, of ductile iron pipeline to be laid. Now, what that will do is significantly reduce non-revenue water and leaks for the common person listening, which will by itself increase by several million gallons supply into Montego Bay, into Trelawney, and into Hanover, into Negril. The project is an emergency implementation, and I think every single citizen of Negril, every single citizen of Lucy, of Green Island, of Montego Bay that was out of water for some 7 days last week will agree that the project is an emergency. So no, there wasn't a competitive bid. We use a firm that has been working on the project for over 20 years. Secondly, the project is being. Can you allow me to finish and then I?
I'm sorry, hang on, sorry. Allow, because you had a very long series of questions. So, Minister, if you could, please. I know, but allow.
So when was the weather issue, Evan? Was it 24 or 2023 in the grid?
The big one.
You know, we're tracking over 100 water infrastructure projects. If you want specific dates and specific things, you can submit questions through the ATI Act at any point. If we miss a date by a year or by a month, I'm happy to admit so. However, the project was declared an emergency. We moved immediately into the engineering phase. Once the engineering phase was complete, we went through a shortened PIAB process, which the Ministry of Finance approved. Then we moved straight into direct contracting. We are now in the construction phase of a project that is an emergency. Last week in Coral Gardens, you had 2 major line breaks that saw all of St. James, that is supplied by the northern system in Montego Bay, out of water. It is an emergency, and we have proceeded accordingly. And no, it was not a competitive process. We use a firm that has built 20 years plus of reputation in Jamaica, which is also arguably the largest construction and engineering firm on earth. Just for those listening who are not familiar with the sector, that firm is certainly the largest in Europe and is arguably the largest on earth. Okay? And their water knowledge is extensive as it relates to the Jamaican market. Next, the issue of how it is financed. 5 billion Jamaican dollars is in what I call the big yellow book for the budget this year, being financed through the Ministry of Finance and its consolidated fund on capital works to get the project started. Because the project has actually started and a large part of it requires the upfront purchase of pipes, we expect the Ministry of Finance to further make allocation now that it has started in supplementary budgets later this year to pick up the pace associated with these pipelines. But this phase will see some 68 kilometers of pipeline replaced, and it is funded by taxpayer dollars through the consolidated. Perhaps I could get some water through the consolidated fund. The next question is very simple, and you can direct that question very clearly to the Ministry of Finance. The project has not increased the debt stock of Jamaica. Jamaica's debt stock relative to GDP continues to decline. The project is being funded by local private sector as well as through international support partners, which I hope I'm pronouncing properly, Proparco, and indeed IDB Invest. Now, those partners came on, and they will tell you, if you have discussions with them, that they viewed it almost as development financing. So they have put forward the funding to the consortium at unprecedented terms. Local dollar fixed term financing, yes, at 15%. That is far cheaper than what was announced by our neighbors who have floated bonds for over 500 million US dollars in US dollar terms at 8%. Now, when one calculates the depreciation expected on any developing country's dollar relative to the mighty US dollar over a 20+ year period, and you contemplate the impact of inflation, it is as close to free as you will get. Now, the NWC pays arrangement, funded by the government, as you have alluded to, is not as you explained. There is a payment reserve account, there is a debt service reserve account, which any loan facility, whether you're buying a car as an individual or as a government, are signing on to any sort of arrangement. It is a PPP. The government is not without involvement in the transaction. It is why at the back end of the transaction, when the terms are complete, a brand new plant, for all intents and purposes, is handed back over to the government. So the government's cost of financing the project is related to its debt service and its payment reserve account. That also is what accounts for the increase in cost, because it was not contemplated when the project was designed that the local market would not have played a far greater role in financing this project. It is to be noted that the consortium went to the local market several times and was unable to secure local financing for the project. It is our international partners who saw the viability of the project, who thought very highly of the project, who have invested in an unprecedented way in local currency at a rate that it will come down. It also, your fascination with the project is noted, but it also does not indicate in any of the stories that you have written that there is room and incentive for both the government through the Water Commission and indeed the consortium partners to refinance at particular points in the life of the contract. But, ma'am, I didn't interrupt your questions, right? The reality is the project has not increased the debt stock of Jamaica. The project does expect, as any investor would, that if I'm going to produce XYZ, you are going to consume that material and pay for it, which anyone would expect.
Thank you, Minister. I have two from online, and bear with it, we were getting back to the presentation. Concerning the 350 million that will be done with drought mitigation, I suppose the person joined a little late, so if you could reiterate the preference to ensure that agricultural areas are fully serviced, and what about the contemplation of water lockoffs should that be, should the dry spell increase to a full-out drought?
Thank you, Naomi. So there is real recognition that our farmers are on the front line of any drought. We are in a drought. So I don't know if they're thinking that drought is coming. We are in a full-out drought. So our farmers are on the front lines of any such fight to mitigate. And we have allocated $100 million through the Ministry of Agriculture that will see water deliveries, support for small irrigation, drip irrigation systems, and grass purchases. But I don't have the full details on that. Minister Green will speak on it in much greater detail later this week. The other $250 million allocation will be primarily focused on critical infrastructure and indeed communities which are impacted. Now, many of the communities which are impacted are outside of the National Water Commission utility footprint. These are the small municipal systems which serve about 11% of the population, which are largely fed by streams. So a lot of trucking will go into these areas to ensure that people have access to the commodity. But we also accept that in times of drought, where yes, there will be lockoffs, there is already some regulation based on systems in place. We thought it important to bring the level of the issue and the scale of the issue to the public's attention. The Water Commission will need additional support because ultimately they provide a vital service at a relatively low cost based on the cost of production of water.
And the final question that we'll take online, is there a schedule, I think it's a follow-up really, is there a schedule to ensure that, I suppose they're really asking about a preemptive measure that the NWC could put in place to ensure that there isn't a rush for trucked water in terms of whether or not there will be a schedule for water lockoffs and or trucking of water to residential areas in particular too?
At all times when the Water Commission regulates systems because of either mechanical issues or climatic issues, the information is made public through the JIS, through their normal press releases. I will encourage citizens to consult the local papers as well as the NWC's website. There will be some regulation, which is why we'll be doing some trucking. There is no way around it with the current rainfall that we have. But one of the measures that the public should be aware of is that we did purchase 8 additional trucks last year. We have increased the fleet to 24 currently, but that is still a fraction of what is required. We are already taking steps to increase that fleet to 32 on the Water Commission side, and we are working with our partners in the Ministry of Local Government to engage local suppliers to ensure no community runs dry.
All right. Thank you, Minister. I think that's it from the online questions. I do know that the Prime Minister has a very packed day,
we do.
including handing over JUTC buses. Minister, back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Naomi, and thank you for all the questions. Thank you, Minister, for answering all of the questions you've had, and thank you for your leadership. I will tell you, from last week, he wanted to do this briefing. He called me every day, and he was arranging for this briefing because he really wanted to be able to explain to Jamaica what's happening and what he is doing. I know he personally was lobbying the Ministry of Finance to release funds to assist us in all of what you've heard, the 350 million allocation that's been done. So I want to thank you, Minister, and I want to congratulate you on all of that hard work. And as we close out this morning, I again want to remind everyone that we're at an exciting time in Jamaica. When I went into St. Thomas with the school bus, a little girl looked at me and said, "This is like in America. We get what they have in America." And she was just so happy. And she said, what's good for them there is good for us here. And in Jamaica too, through speed, through our efforts to be more efficient, we're making changes, as you all know, to vehicle registration and fitness, making it a lot less onerous on individuals. And starting July 21, which is Monday, we're doing something else that is very progressive in nature. We are no longer going to have those awful decals on our windows. Our motor vehicle registration and fitness certificates will be transitioning to a digital process. What does that mean? It means that you will get an email with those. You'll also not need to print it out. So when you are stopped.
So last night he used him. Honestly, nothing better.
In his system, and all you need to do is to just click, download, and save it, and just drive. This is how we're making things very different. We're using innovations that have been seen around the world and bringing them right here to Jamaica to make the lives of our people much better. This is undoubtedly a government that truly cares, and we will continue to make innovations like this happen. And as you heard this morning, we're thinking long term. We're thinking about the future, all the awesome work that our public servants have done. And you heard them this morning. We have some of the best public servants you can find anywhere in the world. You heard them from Water Resources Authority. You heard NWC. You heard Evan, who is just like superb, one of the best in the world. And we have others in the room from NEPA, the PS, who are just excellent. They're excellent people. We have excellent workers in the public service. And that's why, for the last thing I'll say today, if you're looking for scholarships and you're a public sector worker, go on the Ministry of Finance's page. We have lots of scholarships for public sector workers to help them to continue to be as excellent as they are. And also importantly, we have scholarships for the children of public sector workers. So please go on the Ministry of Finance website if you are interested and get more information on these awesome scholarships that have been provided by the government of Jamaica. And so on another Wednesday morning where we took some challenging questions, but nothing is too challenging for us. We answer all the questions that come from the media. We are saying goodbye for now, and we look forward to seeing you at our next press briefing. And God bless all of you who are watching. God bless this wonderful, beautiful country that we have, Jamaica, land we love. Thank you.
Amen.
There you have it. You just had a cabinet post press briefing. You just have a cabinet post press briefing right there. We have some other news coming into us that, let me take this off of here and put on back the Make We Talk thing here. Before we go, we're scheduled to go live right now, but we can't go live right now in a different program. We're live. And that's what I mean. We're supposed to go live with a program now, but I have changed my mind not to go live as yet, because we're going to bring you something at 12 midday, 11 o'clock Jamaica time. We will bring you a coverage of something that I think we all need to see and take note of and pick sense out of nonsense. Anyway, before I go off air, there is an item of news that comes into us. With the current parliamentary term ending on or before September 14th, 2025, the Constitutional Amendment Republic Bill 2024 will not be tabled and voted on by lawmakers before Jamaicans go to the polls to elect a new government. Let me read that again. With the current parliamentary term ending on or before September 14th, 2025, the Constitutional Amendment Republic Bill 2024 will not be debated or voted on by lawmakers before Jamaicans go to the polls to elect a new government. So there you have it. They will not be debating or voting on the Republic Bill of 2024. So that is the news we have coming in. And the other news we had coming in was there is an explosion outside the United States Embassy. A car is on fire as we speak. It's not any news from before. It's the news that's happening now. And that is what we have coming into us. So that is the news. Give you 5 minutes for what? No, I can't give anybody more 5 minutes because I gotta run. I can't go. I can't do anything more. What I can say though, what is concerning me is this: with the current parliamentary term ending on or before September 14th, 2025, the Constitutional Amendment Republic Bill 2024 will not be debated and voted on by lawmakers before Jamaicans go to the polls to elect a new government. And news that unconfirmed news to me, that the election will be called on August 10th. I heard that they're going to be a mass meeting in Morant Bay, and I'm being told, unconfirmed, that the Prime Minister will announce the date of the election then. I can't confirm that, but that's what I'm being told, and I'm just giving it to you guys. That we must have a heads up. And when I come on air and bring you Jamaica Labour Party conference or whatever, we must watch it, you know. We must watch it and pick sense out of nonsense. So that is the news we have coming into you right now. So based on all of that, there is something growing under the realms of everything here. We must not take this thing lightly. We must go out and vote when the time comes. And this constitutional amendment bill, it is something that we're pushing through the parliament for the opposition to vote. And you know, I don't think people should rush things like those, you know. But anyway, there is something that I wanted to do this morning, but I can't do it because, as I said before, I need to we need to bring you a coverage of what is going to happen at 12 o'clock with Daryl Vaz. There is a live coverage at Daryl Vaz doing something at 12 o'clock that I need to bring to our audience here. And we're still asking Minister Vaz to come on this platform here, or Mr. Rattigan platform, and speak to us about these buses. We have been calling his cell number, no answer. We're going to send some emails and WhatsApp to him and see if he will answer. Which of that I know they won't come on my platform, because we have been told that the hierarchy of the Jamaica Labour Party has issued warning to their members and high officials that they should not be seen on the Make We Talk program or Reason with Rattigan's program. But I'm still sending out my invitation to Minister Vaz to come on. So that is what we have on the Make We Talk program right now. At 12 o'clock, join us for the handing over of 96 buses by Darrell Vaz. And what I said, that you must come and watch it. Come and watch it. Because one is saying that the school buses was for free, and the other one is saying that the school buses you must pay for. You must pay $50. The kids must pay $50. So we don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, people, thank you all for coming on. Join us then at 12 o'clock Jamaica, 12 o'clock midday US time, and 11 o'clock Jamaica time. My heart goes out to the people of New Jersey. I have family members and friends in New Jersey. They had a massive flood and rain yesterday and the day before, and people were flooded out. My heart goes out to them. Whether we like it, yes or no, climate change is real, and hurricane season is in. The drought is on. I heard them talking about drought mitigation in Jamaica. My question is this. Every year we have drought in Jamaica. Why can't they put things in place before the drought come to make sure that our farmers in St. Elizabeth and our people have water? I'm going to do, hey Gigi, how you doing? I'm going to do an investigation on some things that we need to speak about on this program here. I'm going to call some people and ask some questions, and hopefully I can get some people to come on. But my heart goes out to the people of New Jersey. They had some rain on Monday, Tuesday, and a lot of people were flooded out. Jamaicans are involved in it also. A lot of people were flooded out, and my heart goes out to them. So there we have it. We're not going to stay long on the program anymore as recap, but let us recap the news that we have into us, that there is a car explode outside the American embassy in Jamaica. Well, it's on fire. Really, it's on fire. And members of the security forces are out there in full force. And also, what we're hearing from the Office of the Constitution and Legal and Constitution Office Minister Marlene Malou-Fort is this, that with the current parliamentary term ending on or before September 14th, 2025, the Constitutional Amendment Republic Bill of 2024 will not be debated or voted on by lawmakers before Jamaicans go to the polls to elect a new government. So that is what we're here. We have coming into a new center here. With the current parliamentary term ending on or before September 14th, 2025, the Constitutional Amendment Bill, the Constitutional Amendment Republic Bill of 2024 will not be debated or voted on by lawmakers before Jamaicans go to the polls to elect a new government. So there you have it. That's the news on the Make We Talk program. Thank you all for joining us. Until you hear my voice again, may God bless you. And may God bless our island home, Jamaica land we love. Join us at 12 o'clock Jamaica time, 11 o'clock US time. 11 o'clock Jamaica time, 12 o'clock US time, sorry, for the coverage of... I need everybody to come on over here and listen to these people. Because one will be saying something else, the Prime Minister will be saying something, and the Minister will be saying something else. And we need to hold them accountable, all right? To hold them accountable. God bless you. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And remember that we have t-shirts for sale. You can call the number 954-529-8030. God bless you all. Have a great afternoon, everybody. A great morning wherever you are.
When the game gets rough and this life just seems so tough, make we talk, my people, make we talk. When this town becomes an ugly place, don't let it erase the smile from your face. Make we talk, people, make we talk. Conversation is the key, a guiding light for you and me. Spark a talk and you will see. Conflict solver A to Z. World leaders master the art of self-defense just by talk. So people, make we talk. Hey, we're living in a world that on ourselves we must depend. Make we talk.